I mentioned before I wasn't sure whether this scooter actually had a fuel filter. I've done a bit more research and it turns out, of course, what I should have guessed all along, it does have a filter. The filter is the other side of this, so it's inside the tank. The owner of this scooter has described to me some issues that sounded like there could be fuel starvation going on, so we definitely need to take that filter out and give it a clean and then decide whether we're going to replace it. I suspect if we replace it, we've got to replace the whole of the tap as well, because I would imagine they come as one piece, but again we'll see when we take it apart. Of course the tank's full of fuel, so the first thing we're going to do is drain the tank. I'm going to use my trusty, you can probably tell I've had it for a while given how mucky it is, Mighty Vac vacuum pump, just to apply vacuum to the vacuum line. Hopefully that'll enable the fuel to flow out. So let's have a crack at that. Okay, I'm going to put some gloves on just in case some fuel comes out. According to the manual, the tank holds 6.5 litres, so we should have plenty of capacity in this one. Usually these old hoses can get a bit stuck. I think I'm probably going to be replacing this hose. So the fact that there's no fuel coming out of there is at least a good sign that the tap is working. What I'm hoping will happen is that I will apply vacuum to this. I've just got a little sort of nozzle there, wedges into hoses like this, and then when I do, fuel will come out. Hey, indeed it does. And we've got a leak in our vacuum system, so the vacuum keeps cutting off. Maybe that actually means, I don't know if you can see what's happening. Let me just check the camera's in the right place. So I'm applying a vacuum. The fuel's flowing for a bit, you can probably hear it, and then it stops. Now I'm wondering whether that's because we've got a leak in the pipe or whether we've got a leak in the diaphragm of the tap. I'll have to check that out. Or indeed whether we've got, I don't think it's the cap not letting air in. We can test that out quite easily by loosening the cap. No, no difference. I have loosened the clamp on this end, so that could be the culprit. Right, I've actually got the new hose that I'm going to use to replace this one already, because I thought, you can probably tell this looks like it's past its best. So if we put the new hose on now, that will give us an indication as to whether it's a leak in the hose, whether it's a leak in there. It's also entirely possible that this seal here could be where the leak is coming from. So let's have a look. can probably tell what I'm doing there, applying a vacuum with my finger over. For a short amount of time it holds, but then longer time it doesn't hold. I do need to check it's nothing to do with my my pump as well. I don't think it is, but I'll test that by taking all the tubing off the pump, putting my finger over the end on the pump. Now the pump's holding the vacuum okay, so it's not the pump, so our tubing is the issue somewhere, so let's just get some new tubing. So obviously for the tubing choice, couldn't resist the opportunity for a little bit of bling, just about matching the colour of the scooter. Some silicone, you can see it's quite a thick wall, can you see that? Thick wall vacuum hose. Just fit this loosely, see if it makes any difference. You can probably tell that has made a difference. So that vacuum hose was leaking. We may have just found the source of our fuel starvation, but I still want to see the filter because I am pretty sure that's not been off in the full life of this scooter. So let's see. Probably a good idea while you're draining the petrol, and I haven't done this yet, but I am about to block up the carburettor lines. Put something over them. I might actually just put this old pipe on that one temporarily, just so that if you drop anything it doesn't go in. I'll get a bit of tape for the other one. Okay, that's stopped. See whether we've still got a vacuum. Indeed we have. Right, time to take this fuel tap out. So a 7mm socket on a long extension. I don't know how well you can see. Let me just bring this round. So that filter, that's the filter. That's actually really clean. Both sides, really clean. So that can go straight back in with some new hoses on it. Got a little arrow on the tap that lines up with that moulding on the tank. So I've got this to the same length as the old one. So while we're working on tubing, I'll give it a new fuel hose as well. Don't know how well you can tell. This is actually pretty hefty fuel hose, probably more than is needed. It's I think it's 5mm. Yeah, you see this is, I don't quite know why, you can actually probably just about see it on there, can you? Injection hose. Doesn't need that for a moped. There's not even a whiff of fuel injection on this moped, so I've got some thinner wall stuff to replace it. That's absolutely fine. Just thread it. Also got some smaller clips to go with the smaller hose. If you're buying clips, try and get them with both the screw head and the hex head, so you can put a socket on. I much prefer to use a socket, much less chance of slipping and chewing everything up with a socket. Just checking that's gone all the way as far as it will go. So this section is how to change the air filter. It's in there. I think it's 3 screws. It's on the left hand side underneath the left hand footrest. As I understand it, this is a reusable filter. It's one sponge one that you oil. Got a big spring clip on the carb. Yeah. It's not actually too bad, but it has started to fall apart, as with a lot of other things on the bike. So I've already decided I'm gonna replace it. That's the one I'm going to replace it with, High Flow HFA 4001DS. Check it's the same size before I take it out of the packet, and it is. I'm just going to unwrap this, put some oil on it, on the outer surface of it, and then we'll put it in. Make sure it's on all the posts that it should be on. That screw isn't in place at all, which is why it isn't going anywhere. I like it. As with a lot of things, best to do all of the screws up a little bit before you tighten them down finally. We didn't actually need that spring clip on the carburettor off in the end, so just putting it back in place. Alright, now it's time to change the spark plug, which is down there. I've got a new NGK BR7HS, so the gap's supposed to be 0.6 to 0.7. I've got this beautiful antique spark plug gap tool by Champion. You definitely ain't going to find this on Amazon, although you might find it on eBay. So that's the 0.7 end and that's the 0.6 end. So the 0.6 fits in, the 0.7 does not, so we're somewhere between 0.6 and 0.7, so we're fine to go ahead. Usually just put a little bit of engine oil or some sort of oil on the threads just to reduce the chance of it seizing. Pull that off, just have a look at the condition of the lead as you do. I was about to say shouldn't be too tight and then was ready for it to be very tight, but actually it wasn't. Just comparing the old and the new there. The 0.7 fits in easily on that one with some room to spare, so the gap, that's either not been gapped properly or it has been gapped properly and it's subsequently worn. In any case, I've decided rather than re-gapping it, cleaning it and putting it back in, I'm going to put a new plug in. The plugs aren't that expensive and this one's been in a while. I didn't show it, but it's also a good idea to make sure you are putting the same plug back in as you took out. Notice we need to unscrew that off this one. One of my favourite pastimes when helping my dad as a child was screwing those electrode pieces on the end of spark plugs. They used to come separate. This time obviously it had one on and we needed to take it off. So when you're fitting your spark plugs, may I encourage you to heed the advice on the box about how tight to do it up. So there's two different types of seat here. The one I've got in my hand is this type. Don't know whether you can see it there, but that's basically saying seat it down and then turn it another half to 2/3 of a turn once it contacts the cylinder head. So there is no need to do them super tight. Okay, so let's get this one installed. So that's about 1/4 of a turn. That's about half a turn. And that's it. I've taken this cover off the right hand side of the engine. Put some light on the situation. So the main reason for that, other than to have a general inspection of it, is to check in particular this 2-stroke oil feed line, to check it looks to be in good condition and not leaking, which indeed it is. While you're there, also have a good look at the feed out of the pump. So this is the 2-stroke pump. Have a look at the feed coming out of the pump through this housing here. And then up to the carburettor, to the intake. Just check it's all looking alright. Here you can see I'm just using my Pella oil vacuum extractor, or it can be used for other fluids as well. Actually, I've used it for coolant before. Just to suck out the old 2-stroke oil. It's been in there for a good few years, and I wouldn't leave 2 or 3 year old engine oil in the sump of a 4-stroke to try and start it up. So I'm going to take this old two-stroke oil out. I'm not going to drain the tube down to the carb because then that will give me more job in terms of bleeding it, but just to get the majority of the oil out so that it can run on some nice fresh stuff, obviously apart from the very first bit that goes in after it's started up. Probably just found out why there was a load of oil spilt down the scooter, and I've contributed to it. Air escaping. If you pour the oil in too fast, it drips everywhere. Okay, let's stop and get a rag. By the way, I am using Silcoline Scoot Sport 2. Seems to have pretty good reviews. Most of my bikes have been 4-stroke, so don't really have a lot of experience with the different oils, but as I say, seems to be well thought of. Tank capacity according to the manual is 1.2 litres. There we go. This battery's been on charge in the corner of the garage here for quite a while. It's been through a full recondition cycle on the CTEC charger, really good charger by the way, showing all green lights, all fine, all charged up. I'm going to take it off the charger now, check the voltage, and then we'll leave it for a bit, see if it holds the charge. The only real way to test it is to put it on the scooter and try and start it up, of course, and we'll do that in due course. So at this point we've changed the two-stroke oil, we've done the spark plug, fuel filter, check the fuel filter, fuel hoses, air filter. I cannot resist the temptation to put the battery in and see if it runs. So let's do it. Just giving the terminals a bit of a clean up first. Hey, that is great news. I hope you can see I'm slowly filling up the garage with plenty of two-stroke smoke, which at least tells me that the oil feed is working. Fuel gauge, not so sure. Indicators, yep. Brake lights. Right, anyway, I'm going to turn this off before I gas myself. Great news, it starts, it runs, it sounds pretty good. One thing I am interested in now I've got the battery charged up is whether the scooter is actually charging the battery when it's running. So the way I check that, start it up. Make sure your multimeter stays on. So it is. Let's put the lights on. So with the main beam on. So that brings this video to an end. Thanks very much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll look forward to seeing you for the next one. Cheers!